Welcome to part 3 of this series called My Kingdom is Not of This World. Please watch part 1 and part 2 in the right order before continuing. Thank you very much. In the previous part, I've spoken about nations. What nations are according to the world and what they are according to Christ. In this document, it's not really an outwork document, but I've made some bullet points for you to remind you what nations are. I'm now going to talk about glory constructs and then I'll shift to the trauma constructs. Just to make things clear to you, if it wasn't clear enough already. A glory construct is a Christ-centered nation. It's a community with Christ at the center. So it's Christ-centered. Christ is the man to whom complete trust is due. So that means that everyone there trusts Christ. Or if people aren't born again, they know Christ is the man. That's the thing about the glory construct. Even if you have unbelievers amongst you, they know Christ is the man. So they can't come with their atheist BS because they know in this community Christ is the center. You don't trust Christ, you can't fully participate. So they would be foolish to remain part of the community if they don't agree with Christ. Now, in a glory construct, you will have traditions, things that have developed over time. There's nothing wrong with having traditions, as long as traditions don't replace your trust in Christ. Okay? In a glory construct, there is participation in life. That's the culture. Everyone is expected to participate in life. That implies that collectively, as a community, people face challenges. There is no such thing as you not wanting to face difficulties. You face difficulties, but you can't face things on your own. You need to cooperate as a community, so everyone is expected to participate. If you don't participate, you are banned from the community. Straight up. Because of this, there's a confident expectation of good. Because Christ is the center, everyone expects the good to happen. There will be difficulties here and there because you're in the world, remember, and Satan will attack you, especially if there's a glory construct. Satan will come after it to hijack it and return it into a trauma construct. Nevertheless, people expect things to work out well. So there's no fear in this community. Even if fear emerges, it can't last long because it's a glory construct. Fear doesn't survive over there. There's organic or natural autonomy. That's what freedom is. It's not the compulsion to act out on impulses or what the world calls liberty, in which the impulse needs to be controlled by an external authority. It's natural autonomy, which is autonomy in line with your design. With natural autonomy comes natural obligation, so everyone looks after one another. Of course, every individual has his or her contribution that they have to do. Nevertheless, no human being can survive on his or her own without the community. So there are natural obligations towards each other. These are basic things, but everyone is expected to keep their natural obligations. Because of all of this, the sexuality of the community is in line with Christ, and it results into healthy and prosperous sexual relationships. Why? Because sexual relationships are designed to maintain and sustain the human population. So in a glory construct, sexual relationships maintain and sustain the community. They're healthy, so the design of those relationships is in line with Christ. So male and female, prosperous because the unions aren't only joyous, but they're also beneficial to the community. This is very important because the human population, let me say this, sexuality isn't just about procreation, it's also about how people relate to one another. Sexual relationships are the foundation of communities. So if the sexual relationships of a community in general are bad, well, the community will be bad also. It's a very important point. In that glory construct, there will be symbols and institutions. There's nothing wrong with symbols and institutions. But contrary to the world, institutions in the glory construct aren't just about prescribing behavior patterns. Because remember, the world functions through patterns. In a glory construct, the institutions, the symbols are part of institutions, intend to examine the mentality of the population. So the institutions are more like guardians to keep people in line with Christ and a natural design for their lives. In a glory construct, the males are the leaders. There's nothing sexist, it's just the way it is. It's God's design. However, they're assisted by their wives, who are full participants in the vision and ambition of their husbands. The males ought to be ambitious, and the females assist them in their ambition. A female can have ambition, but there must be male supervision to guide her. And it's the males that are the leaders, and the females, especially the wives, are full participants. So no romantic BS, no Prince Charming BS. None of that. No free ride, ladies. You are full participants. That's how it goes in a glory construct. But be of good cheer. It's not a toxic nor exhausting participation like you have in the world. And in a glory construct, the elders keep the community in check. Oh, the elders are the ones running the institutions. What the elders do, they supervise the families, the sexual relationships, economic activities. They supervise these things in the community. And they themselves participate in material prosperity. So the elders are the older men. There can also be young men amongst them. They are the men that are the nobles of that community. Noble in the sense that they strengthen the youth and they extend the youth of the community. What do I mean with extending the youth? By keeping the community in check, by supervising the sexual relationships, the economic activities, and the families, they make sure that the sexual relationships or marriages in the community remain healthy, so that the community is sustained and maintained. They make effort so the mentality of the community remains in line with Christ. And because of all of this, there is healing in the community, there's prosperity, and people don't really age. Of course, before Christ returns, we will have mortal bodies. Okay, that's how it is. But just because you have a mortal body doesn't mean that you have to die soon, nor that you have to spend years falling apart. What we call old age shouldn't even exist in a glory construct. People can be 70, 80, 90 years old and still be in the strength of their 30. Such things are possible if a community is healthy. So the elders, they operate in prosperity with the purpose to strengthen the youth and extend the youth of the community. Very important. And by the way, the elders also have their wives that support them, assist them, who are also full participants. Ownership is just a means to secure bodily needs. Very important. The whole idea of owning something, owning a house, owning a car, owning clothes, owning this and that, it's only to secure bodily needs. So nobody owns anything unconditionally. Even in the world, this is not the case. I've explained that in previous videos already. Ownership is a social construct. It's not a natural thing. You're born, you operate in this body, the body expires, you're gone, and it's Christ that will have to resurrect you. Whatever you possessed while being in this body was just, how would I say it? It was just agreed that you were allowed to have those things by the community. So theft when it comes to ownership is just a violation of a social agreement. And that social agreement of ownership has its conditions. For example, if you have a house, the house has been empty for more than a decade because people abandoned the house, then nobody has any claim to whatever's in that house anymore. Anyone that comes by can just take away what's left in the house. But if people are still living in the house and they need things out of the house, okay, then you can't just enter in, because then you would be breaking in. You see the difference here? There is no such thing as unconditional ownership. It doesn't exist. And in a glory construct, it is obvious because Christ is the owner of the earth, not us. We participate in his ownership, but we're not the owners. So all possessions during this lifetime are just a means to secure bodily needs and to prevent misfortune. They are financed in a glory construct, but Christ is the center. And in a glory construct, every company, corporation, business, estate, social gathering, that means a club, and every enterprise seeks to magnify the happiness of the community with Christ as the one they please. So every undertaking in a glory construct aims to please Christ by magnifying the happiness of the community. So it's not about me, not about me getting a bigger house or living the good life. It's all about magnifying the happiness of the community to please Christ. Even if you have unbelievers amongst you, they will sense this. And they know if they disrupt things, they better get out because it will be very uncomfortable for them to be there. Christ is the only one charged with difficulties. Oh, this is important. Because Scripture says that we need to cast our cares on the Lord because he takes care of us. So all difficulties is charged on Christ. That doesn't mean that the community doesn't do anything. The community is active because we participate in life, but Christ is the one we charge, not ourselves, because that will lead to stress, that will lead to sickness, that will lead to dysfunction in relationships. No, Christ is the one charged with our oral difficulties. The community is blameless. In exchange, because this can only function if people obey the guidance of the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is the one that works out all situations, that includes all the tragedies and attacks that will come into our everlasting and permanent bliss. Okay, this is a glory construct. In a glory construct, an authority implies an assigned role to secure the needs and well-being of the community. For example, mother, father, wife, husband, or teacher, administrator, apostle. All those things are roles that the community assigns to someone to secure the well-being and needs of a part of that community. An institute in a glory construct is an organization to regulate an activity to secure Christ's interest. Because remember, every undertaking in that community intends to please Christ by magnifying the happiness of the community. So, institutes in a glory construct are organizations to regulate an activity to secure Christ's interest. An institution in a glory construct is an organization to transfer an idea, that's a desired outcome, into the minds of the population by enforcing rewards and repercussions to secure the desired outcome. As explained here, the institutions examine the mentality of the population, keep it in line with Christ and the natural design of the human species. Power in a glory construct, is all centered on Christ, is the ability provided by the Holy Spirit to collectively as well as individually promote and enforce the felicity, bliss, happiness, and joyous ambition of God on the earth. And sovereignty does not apply to a glory construct. You'll find out why. As I mentioned before, you had the glory constructs throughout human history. When the apostles began spreading the gospel, you had glory constructs here and there that emerged. the Apostle Paul began to administer those glory constructs, which were like babies back then. They were still forming. And Paul paid a dear price for it because he was persecuted the whole time during his ministry. A lot. The glory constructs that emerged in the world where the gospel was spread grew so much that they developed their own economy as an alternative to the world's economy. And that was a threat to the Roman Empire. That's why later Satan hijacked the glory constructs that emerged and he transformed them into Roman Catholic kingdoms. Because the Roman Catholic kingdoms that emerged in Europe were the glory constructs that believers established throughout the generations, but they were hijacked and they were corrupted into trauma constructs. Now, there were still many believers amongst them, but the glory constructs were suppressed. As I mentioned before in the previous video, the enemy often hijacks and plagiarizes what believers are doing. That's why the Roman Catholic kingdoms had an appearance of godliness, but they didn't operate in the power thereof. That church in Rome itself is a trauma construct, if you get what I mean, that pretends to be a glory construct. Okay, let's continue. Worldly nations or trauma constructs. Those are based on seeking relief. People want to be left alone. They don't want to face difficulty. They just want things to happen for them without them having to face any difficulty. They don't want to hear anything about it. They are self-centered, so they're narcissistic. And the nation is an extension of the self. So worldly nations or trauma constructs are the establishment of collective narcissism. That's why it operates in patterns, which are self-destructive cycles extended throughout generations. I said I put paranormal here because demons operate in patterns, and when human beings operate in patterns, they become self-destructive. Demons are already ruined, but when human beings operate in patterns, it becomes self-destructive because we're not meant to operate in patterns. Though to the collective, so narcissism, people don't see the self-destruction of operating in patterns and cycles. Now, in a trauma construct, not everyone is a narcissist. A collective narcissism doesn't imply that everyone that participates is a narcissist. Okay? It just means that people participate in an established narcissism that they're not aware of. A trauma construct is male-centered, or it's patriarchal. Now, the word trauma constructs before the Greek Empire, that I won't say they were female-centered, but they were more, I would say, a bit more friendly towards females. But since the Greek Empire, the trauma constructs are all male-centered. Females are considered mere instruments. Or maybe I should choose another word here, but females are just instruments in a trauma construct. Nothing more. An instrument to bring forth the next generation, means having babies, and for leisure, prostitution. That's all females are for in a trauma construct, because it's all centered around males. Very important to know this. A trauma construct has a black and white thinking, which results in an us versus them. That's mental duality, which is how collective narcissism operates. The black and white thinking is reflected in codified policies, which are codes written in black ink. We call them laws, and they're enforced by an impersonal and emotional distant system of judges and law enforcers. And that's what you have in the world. You have law enforcers and judges that are impersonal and separated from the people. They have to dress and act in a formal, distant way, because they are enforcing patterns and cycles. That's what the codified policies or laws are all about, enforcing patterns and cycles. They're not there to protect the population, even though there's an impression that the laws are there to protect the people. They're there to keep people trapped in patterns and cycles. Because of this, the codified policies, they disable every form of natural autonomy by replacing organic flexibility with rigid and robotic social mechanisms. That's liberty. So there is no freedom in a trauma construct, because every form of freedom is disabled by the codified policies. Because when you don't comply with the codified policies, there are punishments. There's collective narcissistic injury when you don't comply with the codified policy, and collective narcissistic rage will be enforced on you by putting you in jail, or by executing you, or banning you from the community, or other forms of retaliation. So people are frightened, people are scared, people are bullied and forced to comply with the codified policies at the expense of their natural autonomy. So what they have in return is liberty, which really that they have impulses that are controlled by the distant system. But they think that because they get relief by giving in to some of those impulses, that they are free. They're not. In a trauma construct, the main goal is to seek self-validation or social validation. These two are the same, even though this one is more individual and this one is more collective. It's both about seeking validation, or the right to exist, or the right to be safe. And this is accomplished through an enacted fear construct that's called society. So in a trauma construct, there are codified policies that enforce a black and white thinking, and this enforcement happens through an impersonal, emotional, distant system where there are punishments or afflictions where you don't comply. So there's a fear construct that the population keeps alive by complying with, and this fear construct is society. And everyone seeks validation to prevent violence from happening to them. This thing is based on violence. This thing is violence, so say it better. Because of this, because it's a trauma construct, there's restricted empathy. Because if people would have full empathy, they would never comply with this. Because there's restricted empathy, people have a blind eye to how sick, twisted, and actually evil this thing is. So only the lives of the in-group matter. Remember, it's a black-white thinking, us versus them. Only people from the us group matter. The rest doesn't. So only those that reflect this fear construct of society, they're the ones that are accepted. All the others are treated as trash. With all of this, natural trust in the Most High and our fellow neighbors is replaced with a cheap substitute. And that cheap substitute is what we call money. I explained the difference between currency and money before. Currency are the paper and the coins, or the digital numbers on a screen, and money is when you can use them. Money is the cheap substitute for natural trust. So there is no trust in a trauma construct. There isn't. And trauma constructs are established as follows. People are anxious. That happens to worldly people because they don't follow Christ. The anxiety turns violent, it turns deadly, because all the resentment, all the tensions, they get out of hand. Then the wizards, those that worship the beast, turn the attention into a single victim, or to a group that is the victim. And then people are the community, I won't say community, but the public is distracted by the attention to the single victim. One individual dumps negative energy on the victim, whether it's physically, by hitting someone, by assault, or verbally. Anyway, the victim is charged, and soon others copy it, because human beings copy one another. We mimic and emulate one another, so more people do it. And unconsciously, everyone turns against the victim, whether it's just a single individual or a group. The killing energy, it therefore turns on the target, and as a result, there's a big release that happens of all toxic tensions of the people. This dumping glues the people together. So a strong unity emerges because all the toxic waste of community is dumped on the victim or victims. This glue is the intense relief, the intense excitement people experience when they do this. And this strong unit, the strong tie of them being a people, is expressed in symbols and rituals, and those rituals are installed to relive the great release. Because there's just a one-time event or a series of events within a short period of time, and it's important to relive this so the strong unity remains. And those rituals are what we call holidays, whether it's religious or national holidays. The community, the strong unit, the community seeks to hold on to this, or hold, I heard it onto is Old English, but okay. They hold on to this strong unity, which is short-lived. It is short-lived, strong coalition, but it needs to be extended. That's why everything that enables extension of this joyous homicidal-based unity, because that's what it is. It's a homicide-based unity. It's based on homicide. It's joyous because they have this intense relief that they experience one another, but this intense relief comes from dumping all the toxic tensions on the victims. The killing or harming of the victims gives them a joyous sensation. So everything that extends them reliving this great moment is considered valuable. So these values receive norms or codified expectations that people have to conform to. So norms and values are prescribed to the community, to the youth, as respect and normalcy. So respect is all about extending the joyous unity that's based on homicide in the form of giving homage to those that enacted the violence. So respect has nothing to do with valuing human beings. Normalcy has to do with complying with extension of this joyous unity. The collective blame of the community or of the ancestors of the community is never admitted. Nobody is allowed to admit that the glue, the emotional glue that keeps people together is based on homicide. It's based on cowards dumping frustrations on victims because they don't want to face life. Nobody is ever allowed to acknowledge this collective narcissism. Okay? And that's why you have those norms that condition people into quote-unquote respect and normalcy so that they will never see through the deception. There's a difference between respect and honor. There's nothing honorable about respect. And there's nothing natural about normalcy. Normalcy can be close to naturality, but it's not a guarantee. Okay? That's why in a trauma construct, the role models reflect a strong agreement to never question the homicidal basis of the community or nation. It's important. All role models in a community that's a trauma construct, it intends to distract people. So, let me give an example. They may have an expectation that by the age of 30, you have to be married and have babies. This may be the case for women. This expectation doesn't appear to be a distraction at first. But when you look at it carefully, this expectation is installed so that women become focused on finding sex partners to bond with. So by doing this, the women are distracted from seeing that the respect they've been conditioned into as children is nothing but a hoax to hide the cowardice of their ancestors. So women that are 25, married with many kids, they assist their husbands, that model is presented to the community, but not with the intention to benefit the women and to lead the women into proper behavior, but to distract them. Because the community needs to have a next generation, and in order for this cycle to keep going, there needs to be new victims. So women need to give birth to new victims. Because from the next generation, some of them will be victims again. But women aren't told that they need to give birth to new victims. Because if you would tell women, we need you to give birth to new victims, the women would think, hold on a minute. So I need to carry a baby for 9 months, then give birth to this human being, just for him to become a target, because people don't want to face life? Are you kidding me? If we tell women this, women would think, hold on a minute, I do want to have babies, but not for this purpose. Okay? It can be also that in a community, in a trauma construct, I don't really want to call it a community, in a trauma construct, they tell men that you need to have property. You need to have houses, land, or else you don't matter. Why is this? And at the same time, they make it difficult for you to attain houses and land. Why would a group of people promote that a man needs to have houses and land, and at the same time they make it hard to get house and land? What's that? It doesn't add up. This is what happens. You promote owning houses and land because that makes you a man, and at the same time you blind the young men from seeing that things are hard for them on purpose to get house and land. Why? By doing this, you keep them distracted from realize that sooner or later some of them will become the sacrificial victims. Nothing is what it seems in a trauma construct. Nothing. So property in a trauma construct, or there's its pride of ownership. As I mentioned before, there's no such thing as natural ownership. It doesn't exist. But in a trauma construct, ownership is based on pride, on relief seeking, and therefore ownership or property is idolized as a god. Because the Most High is not acknowledged. So food, water, clothes, housing, agricultural land, all of that becomes a god, becomes an absolute right, instead of a construct agreed upon. And here's the thing, every decade or 25 years, that's the generation, the cycle needs to be renewed with a fresh collective trauma. Because it's based on trauma, so you need to have fresh trauma to keep it going. If a trauma was quite intense, for example, the Second World War, that was a trauma ritual that got out of hand, really out of hand. That was good enough for about 70 years. Now you see that they need to have a new trauma collectively, because many of the people that experienced that trauma of the Second World War are now gone. There are very few of them alive still in 2019 now. Soon, all of them will have passed away. And then you only have memories and rituals. But for a trauma construct to continue, you need to have a quote-unquote fresh collective trauma. So I don't know exactly what the pagan rulers are doing at the moment, but they're now designing a new collective trauma for Europe, for what you can call white people. I have an idea already what the trauma is, but I'm not going to make suggestions on YouTube, because if things happen in a different way, people will call me a false prophet. But I have an idea what type of trauma they have in store for white people. But okay, let's continue. In a trauma construct, the kingdoms or empires go like this. The king or emperor, I'm going to use the word king now, the king dedicates himself for life to enforce his ambition on those inhabiting territory. There's nothing wrong with this. That's what the king ought to do. A king ought to dedicate his life to enforce his ambition on those inhabiting the territory. In a trauma construct, the king is assisted by the nobles, and the nobles all have their own agenda, but their agenda is function as an extension of the king's vision. And it's through institutions that the people conform to the ambition of the king. And it's this conformity to the king's ambition that shapes them as a community. So if you have, for example, the kingdom of Norway, or the kingdom of Sweden, or the kingdom of Cambodia, or you had, in the past, you had the kingdom of Korea, you had also Spanish kingdoms were established in Americas, and before that you had some Native American kingdoms. In all those kingdoms, the community was shaped after the ambition of the king. That's why when a king died and the heir took the throne, often the community was reshaped in a different fashion, often without the people being aware of it. In a republic, I already explained the difference between a republic and a kingdom. In a republic, you have a group of wealthy landowners or ship owners, because most of the commerce and economic transactions happen by sea. The ship owners and the landowners come together as a cult, and they agree to select a temporary supervisor to secure their common interests, while the community is distracted from noticing the nobles, aristocrats, due to the visible promotion of the president. So the cult of wealthy landowners and ship owners, they select a supervisor who is the president, because he presides over their gathering, and the wealthy landowners and ship owners, they promote this president, this temporary supervisor. So the public sees the temporary supervisor, because the temporary supervisor is decorated with security guards, with symbols, with a lot of money, with a presidential palace, with homage as if he's a god, sometimes a she. So the people think that he is the one leading things, but that's not the case. So that's what the republic comes down to. And in a republic, the people think that they are the ones that determine what happens, but that's not the case. A republic can also be part of a kingdom. And this may sound a bit confusing, but think about it like this. In a kingdom, the king enforces his vision in a territory. But if the king decides that he's going to abandon a part of his territory, then that part of the territory will be handed over to the knights. A knight is a model citizen of a kingdom. That's what a knight is. But there are times a king, together with his relatives, decide to forfeit a part of their territory, and that part of the territory will then be governed by the knights, who are the wealthy landowners and ship owners. And those knights will have a fellow knight who will become their temporary supervisor or their president, and then the public sees the temporary supervisor, think that, oh, we don't have a king, we have a president. But that republic can be the extension of a kingdom, but people don't see it. Then people see the flag of the republic, they see the symbol of the republic, thinking they are an independent nation. That may not be the case. So that republic is a hoax in itself. You have real republics, but even those are often dependent financially on some kingdom somewhere. So there are many republics today that are hoaxes. You just have to look at the bigger picture and see the pattern. Especially the financial and economic pattern of that republic. You will see to which kingdom or which dynasty that republic belongs. In the world, a transition from a kingdom where there's an obvious enforcement of masculine ambition, when a transition happens from this towards a republic where there's a loose coalition of the rich enabled by the perception of involvement by the community, a perception of involvement, this is considered liberation or a progress to modernity. That's why most countries today are republics. That is to keep this illusion of modernity and progress going. In trauma constructs, authority implies the collective assigned roles to secure the relief seeking of the community. It's all about the relief seeking, as mentioned before, because we want to avoid life. That's just world people. Institutes are organizations regulate an activity to secure someone's interest, because it's about either the king or about the knights, who are the wealthy landowners or ship owners. An institution is an organization to transfer an idea, desired outcome, into the minds of the population by enforcing rewards and precautions to secure the desired outcome. That's similar to a glory construct, but here it's all about seeking the relief. It's all about enforcing the patterns and cycles. So the institutions here are a tool by the wizards to secure that the population is trapped in patterns and cycles. That is to keep them away from doing God's will. Power, according to the world, is the ability to trap people in a cycle even if they intend to seek a way out. So you're trapped into participating in a cycle. That's what power is, according to the world. Sovereignty, this is a Roman term, and implies the right of an ethnic group or population to kill their own members without any god or outsiders calling them to an account. That's what sovereignty is, the right to kill your own, without anyone telling you anything. You decide who's worthy to live and who should die. In kingdoms, this right is personified in the king. In republics, this is personified as democracy, or it is invested in the military dictator. There's a substitute of the king, because there is no central ambition in a republic. A republic doesn't have ambition, just interests that needs to work to prevent violence. That's what you have with the republic. In a kingdom, you have an organized ambition and everything conforms to it. So, I explained again the difference between a Christ-centered nation and a worldly nation, a trauma construct versus a glory construct. A glory construct is based on healthy and prosperous sexual relationships. And sexual relationships here are a tool to maintain and sustain a community. So, there are benefits in sexual relationships like companionship, physical enjoyment, and all of that, but those are side effects, because the main purpose of sexual relationships as God designed it is to maintain and sustain the community. Because you are enforcing the happiness of God on the earth. So you are already happy. So sexual relationships are not sexual relationships are not intended to seek happiness, nor to seek an escape from daily challenges. You're already happy, and this happiness as you express in sexual relationships to maintain and sustain the community by procreating, and as well as by regulating male energy in the community. Because sexual relationships aren't just about the physical activity, it's also about the regulation of the energetic emissions of both males and females in the community. The world also has sexual regulations, but there it's male-centered and only to procreate and to prostitute. And this prostitution also happens often in the form of sodomy. Okay? So, you want a glory construct? Rely on Christ. Cast all your cares on Him. You walk by faith, covenant expectation of good. Then you have natural autonomy, backed up by the Holy Spirit Himself. You have natural obligations towards one another. Okay? This results in healthy and prosperous sexual relationships that will last. You will have elders that will supervise the sexual relationships and the community as a whole. They won't control the community, but they will supervise the community. There's a big difference. Because in a trauma construct, it's all about control. And because of that, nobody is left out. Nobody is looked down upon. Everyone is taken care of. Let me see. What did I want to say about this? By the way, if I used a weird sentence structure in this document, well, please forgive me. I'm not a native English speaker. I know that's not an excuse, but I tend to express things a bit differently than native English speakers. If something is not clear here, just either leave a short comment, or if it's a long question, or you want to ask something concerning projects or something like that, send me an email. And I'll write my email here for you to see. Okay, this is my email. You can contact me over there. By the way, I use the British spelling in this document. So if you're American and you see that I use an extra U in some words, don't be offended. And I didn't intend to make this a serious document. It was just to make this video for you. Okay? Well, that's it for now. This is already 45 minutes. I didn't intend to make this long, but I made it this long to edify you and to train you. Christ said, "Go you into the world and make of all nations my disciples." So those trauma constructs of the world, turn them into glory constructs to glorify the Most High. And of course, we can generate and create new glory constructs backed up by the Holy Spirit. That's also possible. That also happens throughout human history. It happens. Okay? Forget about the hijacking and plagiarism that happened later by the enemy. These things happen, and they should continue to happen until Christ returns. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.